law is a good idea.
I think we'd all agree with that, but this is now a very complicated mess, Suhasini, because the very, very cautious response from India to the Americans today complicates how we might respond to Canada going forward. And I'm wondering how that tightrope will be walked.
Well, as I said, Barkha, I think the real failure right now seems to be of diplomacy. It seems as if every other kind of arm of the government has been allowed to prevail for the last few months, and the role of the MEA has been reduced to a kind of damage limitation, covering up sort of role. I think, therefore, it is time really for the government to go forward, and something I say on your show very often, really come clean about what they actually are saying. You cannot evince surprise at what Mr. Trudeau said. And let's be clear, Mr. Trudeau said in Parliament that there's credible evidence against Indian government agents. That's exactly what the United States is saying. In a senior Indian government official who is still in charge, who is still in government, is responsible for directing an assassination plot. That's what the US is saying. It's pretty much what Canada is saying. So India is going to have to decide how they want to deal with this, both in terms of how they're dealing with their counterparts, but also in terms of public diplomacy. I think the idea that they could just keep saying this is a high security matter, or this is about inputs, this is this is about bilateral security cooperation, that time has gone, because the US is no longer holding to that. The US has not just put everything into an indictment. It has made it very clear that a lot of the evidence in that indictment could not have been got in the normal sort of way by just getting hold of somebody's telephone in the US. There's clear evidence that there was a sort of pre-surveillance going on, a sort of operation which I'm not sure is even legal in Indian terms. And the US has made it clear that it had certain suspicions. It has been able to find proof for those suspicions, both in the US and Canada. There's a bit where, apparently they say there are 3 more hits in Canada that are still planned apart from the Pannun hit. All of these you can dismiss as hearsay. But now that they're in an indictment, and now that a grand jury has decided that the charges can stand up in a trial, I think the government is going to have to come out with a little more than what they have said so far. On the one hand, to say absurd, motivated, baseless when it comes to Canada, some of that is either going to have to be walked back, or there has to be some kind of a new tack that the government takes in terms of, as I said, it really is time for the MEA to do what it is meant to do, is to build these relations, to build public diplomacy.
I'm sorry I'm interrupting you, but literally, I know you're all sort of are short of time. So General Katoch, very quickly, and then I'll give a 30-seconder to Lisa and Ambassador Sinha. General Katoch. Yeah.
Oh, well, Barkha, in my view, I think diplomacy has to take the course now. The Indo-US relationship is much too important to be sacrificed on the altar of what is perceived to be an assassination attempt. So both politically and diplomatically, I think this needs to be handled. But there is another issue which needs to be handled. I think let me give the credit to the Americans that this is an operation which actually has taken place. To presume that the government of India at the highest level, that Prime Minister Modi is directing these attacks, I think that is a bit too far-fetched.
I don't think anyone's saying that. I don't think anyone is saying that. There is a reference to a government official.
No, I think Terry made that statement that the Prime Minister has to back down or something like that, basically. So you see, at the government at the highest level, nobody gets involved. Anybody who has a knowledge of these operations, what we call in the military as black operations, they are kept very close to the chest and they're kept at the lowest level. So if it has taken place, that is one aspect which needs to be looked into. The second aspect, very briefly, I'm quite certain that if this has taken place, there is a leak somewhere within the government or within the Indian intelligence agencies. I think we need to buckle up and find out what that is. Otherwise, we are compromising our own security. Barkha.
Yes. Very briefly, Terry, I don't think you were making the point that the Prime Minister is involved in this. You were making the point that the public may reward the Modi government if they believe this has happened, right, Terry? I don't want to speak for you, but very quickly, Terry?
Yes, yes. Be very, very quick. We hear this a lot. That hey, Modi's facing election. He's going to be re-elected in a landslide because lots of Indians, and by the way, lots of Canadians too, will say, well, if he's running around wiping out terrorists, good for him. We'll vote for Modi.
Yeah.
I'm just cautioning that that's not the end of the argument. There is a real
Got it.
problem if that argument runs away with it.
Got it. Lisa, what would Washington be looking for from India at this point, publicly and privately?
So I agree absolutely with everything Suhasini said. There is a diplomatic solution to be had. If India takes this seriously, if India can somehow, assure the U.S. that, nothing like this is going to happen ever again, I think this will be helpful. And this can be done largely out of the public eye. I don't think there's any reason that there has to be a lot of publicity around this because it is such a sensitive issue. And then I think on the U.S. side, maybe there's something more that the U.S. can do to control, some of these elements that are causing concerns in India. I think that's what we have to recognize. The U.S. has concerns about this assassination plot. Well, India has very serious concerns about Sikh activists, a fringe element inciting violence inside India, which also needs to be dealt with. So I think, there is a way forward here. It seems like we, have seen the first steps toward that way forward. And, there's too much at stake. The two countries have invested far too much in this relationship over the last few years to allow this to impact relations in any, long-lasting way.
Right. Ambassador Sinha, closing comment. Would you agree with Lisa on that last point? That diplomacy has to now swing into action? There are mutual concerns. This can be resolved privately?
Absolutely. I totally agree with her that if the US takes action against these terror groups that are plotting to break up my country, then yes, our relations can move forward. And I think in any case, government of India should take action against any rogue element that is there in this government. Not only a rogue element, it's also a very dumb element who goes around, identifies a person to be his killer who is already an American agent. And why would America be tapping all Indian officials? So obviously they were tapping this Mr. Gupta, Nikhil Gupta, and some dumb Indian official decided to contact him, of all people, to go and take some action against whatever they were supposed to do. So this is a case of absolute shoddy job in India by some people. Government of India should take action against that. But India-US relations can move forward on a solid footing only if the US takes action against these elements.